Well, old and rotten, but certainly not forgotten, at least not by me. 2007's The Invisible. It has a 20% on the tomato meter and a 57% on the audience score. And wouldn't you know it, wow, it is not quite invisible. It has over 300,000 user ratings, which I found very surprising when I went to this front page for it on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought I would find that this was very obscure, that I would find fewer than like 20,000 ratings, but surprise, surprise, this is a much bigger movie than I thought. And the reason I thought it wasn't a big movie, that it would have an obscure number of ratings, is because it feels straight up like a straight to TV after school special type movie, but one which is certainly rated PG-13. It's got violence, it's got more violence, and it's got a little bit of sex, but not, a very small, unnoticeable amount. Mostly it's just got a whole bunch of violence and a whole lot of weirdness and actors reading their lines very poorly. Most of these actors have all been in other projects, and yet in this film, they come across as like first timers. Even Justin Chatwin, who's not certainly wasn't a first timer in this movie. He straight up looks like he's reading his lines off of cards that somebody's holding up. I mean, it's really bad. And a lot of the other actors, it isn't that great either. We have Canadian actors, a lot of those. We have some Australian actors, and we have a couple of actors, very obscure ones from the Pacific Northwest parts of the U.S. This was certainly filmed in Canada, and it felt like a very low-budget Canadian production. I recognize some of the locations there around and inside of Vancouver, BC. And in fact, the house that the main character lives in, this house, I believe, was the same house that was used in the film Elektra. It has also been shown in different sci-fi shows like Battlestar Galactica. It has been in a lot of different productions. It's a house that's somewhere outside the Vancouver area. That's the big problem with Canadian productions, is that they feel too familiar. I've seen all the locations before. I've seen all the specific houses before, even when they try to decorate them and paint them differently and put different things around them. I still recognize them, and it kind of pulls me out of the believability. But that wasn't the real flaw with this. The real flaw was just the piss poor acting, the very long, what felt like a very long running time. It's only 101 minutes, but it felt like it was over 2 hours. And it just had so many logical fails, so many of the things that I like to find on a rotten film. Plot fail after plot hole after plot fail after plot hole. Just a whole lot of that stuff that I guess would be passable to somebody that's 12 years old, but as an adult, wow, I'm just surprised that this even has a 57% on the audience score. I thought I would see like a 20% here, but for some reason, people are giving this a lot of credit. Now, if you're thinking this is some kind of, going by the poster or the box cover, whatever you want to call it, if you look at this, you'll think, well, this is going to be some type of teen supernatural thriller. But it's not. In fact, this movie goes through like over 35 minutes of its running time before it even gives you a hint that anything supernatural is even going to happen. So it's more like a suspense crime story type of thing with teenagers. That's what it feels like. The supernatural parts, they're not really supernatural. In fact, there's no budget for supernatural. To make a long story short, this movie's not original. It does what a lot of other films have done, where a character's either dead or close to being dead somewhere, and they're not quite dead, their body is still alive, and yet they're moving around like a ghost trying to solve their murder or get people to find their body, etc. I've seen this done in like 3 or 4 different films with a lot of bigger budgets and a lot of different actors and things thrown into the mix. So this felt very old, but this was very boring on top of it. And this movie didn't have a budget to show you the effect of the main character being a ghost. So they just used tricks of editing, like had him, for example, he would run into somebody in a hallway, and since he's a ghost, he shouldn't be able to knock them over. But no, he straight up knocks people down when he runs into them. But then it just does a little editing trick and shows you that that person's still walking down the hallway. He didn't actually knock them over. And, he'll close a door and the door actually, you see the door being shut, or you see him knocking things off a desk, and then it just, goes to a very quick edit, and then the desk has all the stuff back on it again like he never knocked it off. So that's how they're getting away with doing the ghost effect without having a budget for that. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. It just makes it feel like a straight to video, straight to after school special type production with a lot of violence. But let's get right into the audience reviews. And I don't know how there are 4 and 5-star reviews on this. I don't know. It's got me just shaking my head. I'm just wondering, what the hell were these people seeing in this thing? Because I gave this movie my full attention, and I can't say that it's worth more than 1 star. 1 star. That's all I'm going to give it. It peaked out at 1 star for me. I'm tempted to give it half a star, but I'm going to say 1 star because some of the actors, they had interesting things going on. It's just the director failed to do anything with those interesting things. Too much other acting that was bad on top of it. But let's see, we have a 3-star review, and I'm only going to entertain 3-star and below reviews because this is an episode of Rotten Reviews. And I'm just going to keep saying that until people get the message. So 3 stars, September 28, 2019, making this about, I don't know, 3 to 4 months old now. Questionably unsatisfying after compelled by the intriguing aspect being the main selling factor. As really, what kind of English is that? It's like somebody that I don't know, English is their 6th language and they're an alien. I just can't continue with that. Let me move on. There's a certain point to a review. You put a paragraph here and it's just like, it sounds like stream of consciousness from somebody that is not fluent in English, and it's like Google Translate was used on Hindi or something. I'm not going to read it. 1 star. Let's read this one. Low budget and teenage equivalent of Ghost, with ignored by single mom yuppie Nick Powell, butting heads with teenage female rebel Annie Newton. Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of like one of those films I mentioned before, where a character's like laying in a bed somewhere and they're moving as a ghost trying to do other stuff while everybody thinks they're dead or in a coma. And at the same time, it's kind of like Ghost. It's trying to rip off some aspects of Ghost in a teenage romance type of way. And it doesn't work. It's got like a teenage romance going on between characters that basically hate each other's guts. And it's not so much a romance as it is a one-sided fantasy by a ghost character. It's a whole lot of fail. I'm going to read a few more of these and then I'm going to get right to my list of fails. 1 star, May 30, 2016. So we've gone, in one page, we've gone back 4 years now, almost 4 years. Oh boy. The Invisible is directed by David S. Goyer and stars Justin Chatwin. That should be enough to scare people away from watching this movie. I wanted to like it, especially after reading the synopsis. The premise is interesting enough that with proper execution it could produce a cult classic. This is also a remake of a foreign film. People don't watch this one. Although it sounds interesting, it is poorly acted, sloppily written, and generally uninteresting. Yes, I agree with all of that, including the 1 star. Don't put yourself through that. Don't put yourself through this. But unless you insist, go ahead, but you might want to take my advice first, and this review is going to be shorter than the film, so I'm going to save you some time. Anyway, let's get right to my list of plot fails and other fails. Yeah, it took 35 minutes for the film to even do anything along the lines of what it promised the audience members, and if you paid for your ticket and you sat in the theater and watched this, in 2007, I don't recall what movie prices were back, but I'm going to say it was like $12 probably. You're probably pissed off because, you sat there for 35 minutes before you even got what you thought you were promised when you went into the theater. So I'm going to say that's a problem. But plot-wise, yeah, let's just say one high school girl character. She's a criminal, part-time criminal. the movie doesn't the movie tries to make her sympathetic and then at other times tries to make her evil. So I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to like her or not. At first, I thought the movie was showing me that she was a delinquent and that she had a troubled upbringing and that I was going to grow to like her or be convinced that there's more to her than that she's not just a delinquent. No, the movie alternates between trying to show me that she's like a delinquent with a heart of gold, and then at other times she's just straight up evil. And it just can't make up its mind which one she is. But let's just say she's a part-time thief after she gets out of her high school classes. She goes out and boosts cars and breaks into jewelry stores and etc. And the first plot problem happened when she broke into, she smashed the glass on a jewelry store window display, a street side facing display late at night, and grabbed a bunch of expensive jewels out of the display. Did you hear the problem with what I just said? Have you ever seen a jewelry store that's like, it's got street facing window displays and overnight, like at 2 in the morning, the jewelry is still located in those displays. Expensive jewelry is just sitting out in those display cases waiting for a thief to come along and smash the glass and grab them all out of there. This wouldn't even pass for reality in the 1950s film, because even a child knows that even if you had street-facing displays on a jewelry store, which there aren't many of those in the world, but there are a few in certain districts of certain big cities, those jewels are only out there during business hours, and then they're locked away in a vault at other times. And a lot of times, it's not even real jewels that are out there. There's fake ones out there. Cheap knockoffs are out there for display. Pictures, just straight up photographs of jewels are out there for display. There aren't going to be expensive jewels out there for somebody to smash and grab. And then the second part of this plot problem is that she gets busted. She straight up gets turned in by her boyfriend as stealing those jewels in a smash and grab, and that's what the police call it, a smash and grab. She's arrested at high school for what is obviously grand theft, and this is a high school that is supposedly in Seattle. It's actually Vancouver, but they're saying it's Seattle. Okay, so she's arrested by the police, taken away to the police station, I would presume, to be booked and whatnot. Grand theft. And then a few minutes later, she's back out on the street doing whatever she wants. No bail, no trial coming up. Just back out on the street again. And the police detectives mentioning that they had picked her up for a smash and grab the day before, yet they don't have a problem with her just being out on the street, like back in school and back doing her regular stuff. Really? That's what's going to happen? Yeah, you smash and grab some jewels in Seattle and let me know if you're going back to your high school class tomorrow. That was like, the movie is just like this. That's why I'm saying it feels like something straight to video made for kids to watch after school. Yeah, but let's move on. 2 stars, December 3rd, 2015. Wow, we're really back in time now, more than 4 years. A confusing movie start to finish. I won't spoil it, but there's so many plot holes I don't know where to begin. The characters have no dialogue to make us feel for them, and certain scenes seem to have no significance. Besides these facts, it is a common plot which we have all seen, and no one has asked to see again. Yes, pretty much all of that. There's so many plot holes. I wrote down a lot of them, but I'm sure there's a lot more. And the characters' dialogue is meaningless. The characters are doing meaningless things. We're getting a lot of wasted running time. Let's see. Let's just read off my list here. The next problem with the plot. Yeah. Okay, this part-time criminal, she gets out of class and then does things like smash and grabs and steals cars. She's turned in by her boyfriend. The boyfriend turns her into the police because he was upset that she wouldn't do what he said. Basically, he was mad at her, so he turned her into the police. Okay, criminals are dumb. They do dumb stuff like this. However, for no apparent reason, this girl thinks that this other student, our main character, played by Justin Chatwin, his name is Nick in the movie, she thinks for whatever reason that he turned her in. Yet he doesn't know anything about what she does after class. He's seen her in class. He's seen her in the lunchroom. He's had a confrontation with her at the lunchroom where she attacked him because she was bullying one of his friends. And so they barely know each other as being students at the same high school. And yet, after the police arrest her, her first conclusion is that this character, Nick, that knows her from nobody at school, he's the one that turned her into the police. So I don't know why. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's a complete plot fail. But then the second part of this plot fail is that that's why she decides that since she thinks that this character, Nick, this student at school that doesn't know anything about her, turned her in for this jewelry theft, she needs to go hunt him down and beat the crap out of him with her two fellow thugs, that her henchmen that help her do this stuff after school. A lot of this just fails because, number one, why does this small high school girl that's relatively attractive, there's nothing weird or off about her other than the way she dresses, and that she acts antisocial. She's got these two thug characters that are her henchmen that are also, I guess, high school kids. They're either in high school or just out of high school, and they just follow her orders and beat people up and do things for her. And she takes them out to find this character of Nick, and they beat him up and throw him into a storm drain, and they think he's dead. And then that's when, the part of the story, this is 35 minutes into the film, this is the part of the story where Nick comes back as a ghost, where he's kind of a ghost out of his body, trying to get people to find his still alive body in the storm drain. But none of this makes any sense. Absolutely none of it. And it shows this girl at the beginning is just like kind of like a social outcast, and she's got a hard family life, and she's got a younger brother she takes care of, and we're supposed to feel sorry for her. And then she straight up just does evil shit like murder Nick and put him in a storm drain. And actually, when the police give her every opportunity to tell them something about, she could just anonymously tell them where his body was. She doesn't bother. She just plays it stone cold killer, won't cooperate with them. What is going on here? Like, this is a fail on so many damn levels, and none of it makes any sense. None of it makes any sense. Let's see. What else do we have here? 2.5 stars, November 18, 2015. Person wears hat. Troubled person takes off hat. Redemption follows somewhat questionable still. Yeah, does that make sense what that reviewer said? Because that's what you're left with this movie. It makes no sense. 1 star, a head scratcher, pure confusion with terrible acting and a dull plot and script. Yeah, really bad acting by almost everybody. There's like one police detective character. He's a Canadian actor. I've seen him in other things, like, for example, I mentioned Battlestar Galactica. He played a Cylon. He's been in a lot of stuff, right? He's a Canadian actor. He's in a lot of sci-fi stuff shot in the Vancouver region. Yeah, he does a decent job. He always does. But everybody else is just pure shit. They look like they're amateurs. They look like they're worse actors than somebody I just pulled off the street. That's how bad they are. And some of them I recognize from other work. And they did decent jobs in other work. And in this film, they straight up just fail like they're just noobs off the street. The acting is so bad. Let's see. What else is on my plot list? Yeah. How is the jewel thief girl back on the street from a smash and grab that's clearly grand theft? And she's got a prior record too, but she's just right back on the street, and the police don't have any problem with it. And the police they think she's a suspect somehow in the disappearance of Nick, but they don't have any problem with the fact that she was arrested just the day before for grand theft, and she's just back on the street walking around, not in a jail cell, not in custody. What in the fuck is going on here? It makes no sense. Another plot problem. Why are the police investigating Nick's disappearance after only a few hours? Like, literally, he's thrown into the storm drain somewhere after midnight, and then less than 8 hours later, his mom notices that he's not at home, that he's not at school. So maybe let's be generous and say 8 to 10 hours later, it's noticed by his mom and by the school that he's disappeared. Nobody knows where he is. So the mom calls the police. The police sends 2 detectives, And these two police detectives decide to put all these police resources on finding this kid, who is not even technically in the United States or, I believe, in Canada, worthy of being considered abducted or anything going on yet. It's only been like 8 to 10 hours. Yet they're putting all these police resources into it. They've got a helicopter, search teams, multiple detectives, APBs, all these police resources, and dozens of cops setting up mobile command sites. He hasn't even been missing 24 hours yet, not even 12 hours. What the fuck is going on? Like, I'm just shaking my head at all of this stuff. What else do we have? Yeah, okay, in this film, when you're a ghost or half a ghost, your body's still alive, but you're somehow a ghost out doing things. You can't affect anything. The movie shows this, that Nick cannot affect anything, but he can affect one thing. He has the mysterious power to make birds feel his presence and take off. Like there could be pigeons just pecking around in the street, and he will like dance around them and they'll suddenly take off. They'll be spooked and take off, and that's his superpower. Why? How does this work? I mean, it actually factors into the plot at one part of this film, and it is completely stupid and unexplained, and it makes no sense. Yeah, he's got the magical power to affect birds, but nothing else. Okay. What else? Yeah, there's a scene where the Joel Thief girl, the high school student, she has no place to sleep because she's kind of on the run from the police. They now suspect her in the disappearance of Nick, only because of her own actions, mind you, that they suspect her because of this, her own stupid actions, like running from the police for no reason and whatnot. So she's on the run from the police. She can't go home. She can't go anywhere. So where does she go? She needs to go back to the high school gymnasium to sleep in there while the school's closed. And you know how she gets into the high school gymnasium? She just uses a pocket knife. See, the doors, did you know that the doors, the way they work on a high school building now, you can just like take out your pocket knife and you can put it in the crack between the two doors and you slide it down and click, the doors just magically open and you can walk inside and just sleep in the high school gym because that's high school security. It's just not cracked up the way it was. Now, I remember when I was in high school back in the late 80s, it may have been against the fire code or whatnot, I don't know, but when the high school was closed, there were actually chains wrapped around the doors. There was no inserting a pocket knife and getting in. And then later on, I visited a high school about, I don't know, about 15 years ago. And I was there, a very short visit to pick somebody up. And I went into the high school and I noticed that that place had security like a government building does, like a federal building does. It had big solid steel doors. It had electronic locks. It had cameras. It had an alarm system. It had all this stuff going on that wasn't there when I was in high school. But yeah, I guess you can just take out your little pocket knife and put it in the crack between the doors and get right in. No problem. No problem at all. No alarms. No nothing. So that was a big fail for me. It's like this was set in 2007, not in 1978, by the way, just so you know. Another plot fail. Is there anything I left out? Let's see. Oh yeah, the music video. This movie, it's only 101 minutes long. It feels like it's a lot longer, but it wastes no opportunities turning itself into a music video at various different parts, like playing what would be in 2007 modern alternative music, and it's to give you this kind of depressing, angsty feel. So parts of this film just randomly turn into like angsty video game montages, and it doesn't do anything for the film except make it seem really stupid and make it seem more like an after-school movie for the kids. It's a complete fail. Let's check yet another page, and I'm seeing 5-star reviews here, and I have no clue why. I have no clue why. Let me just read one, just to find out what it is I'm missing. There's one 5-star review here from August 20, 2014. I'm just going to read this to find out just how crazy it is. I personally loved this movie and was captured by the creativity of it and felt as if the characters were very well developed. As the movie progressed, I really felt to connect with these characters, and that's what made me really involved in this movie. I found it to be very well directed and personally have no complaints with this movie except for the fact that it was too good. That doesn't sound like a real reviewer to me. That sounds like somebody on a marketing team putting something there. I always wonder about this. Like, I see this a lot on films that have been out for several years. Maybe they're being sold again or remarketed again in another market, like outside the US. This is a review from 2014. It's 7 years after the film's theatrical release. I'm wondering if somewhere out there in some country this wasn't released somewhere on Blu-ray or DVD or as part of a collection, and that's why you see these reviews that seem very much like marketing. People have put these reviews there. But I'm just going to leave it at that. That's my conspiracy mind at work, because this thing's a straight up 1-star movie. 2.5 stars, June 19, 2014. So we're back almost 5 years now. It's more like a teen fantasy drama film than a supernatural stuff. Yeah, there's almost nothing supernatural here. Except, let's just say, at the very end, there's an attempt at something supernatural. Like, the character of Nick, he's still in some kind of coma. And this jewel thief character, who doesn't even like him, he's somehow able to influence her thoughts and convince her to lay down next to him in his hospital bed. And she pulls out this necklace that she's wearing that you never saw before in the film. This evil, unlikable jewel thief high school girl. She is wearing some kind of necklace that has an angel on it. And you never see this earlier in the film, so there's no setup to this. And she lays down next to Nick, and she pulls out this little silver angel necklace and clutches it while she's laying next to him on the hospital bed. And magically, he comes back to life out of his coma. And then I guess it doesn't really say whether she died or not. She looks like she's unconscious. I'm presuming she transferred her life force into him or something. It's like something out of, a Star Wars movie, like Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, where there's people using the force to put their life force into other people to bring them back to life. It's like an attempt to do that, but the movie doesn't do it very well, so I was kind of left wondering if that's what happened, or I'm just thinking or maybe he just woke up magically as she clutched the angel. I mean, I'm not really sure on that. It's got this ending where it shows Nick and the younger brother of the thief character. They're flying a plane like at a park at the end, and they've written her name on the wings of the plane. And so that's at the part of the film I'm convinced now that, yes, she somehow did die on that hospital bed, and she transferred her life force into him to bring him back and sacrificed herself. And now she's dead. And supposedly Nick, he's now taking care of her younger brother, or supervising him, or hanging out with him on the weekends at the park. I don't know what this film was really trying to tell me at the end. It was trying to tell me something. There was a clear attempt to give me some kind of message, but I'm sorry, it just went wildly off the mark. I'm sorry, I just don't know what the message was, but there was an attempt at something. Let's continue on. 1.5 stars. 30%, some scenes make this so bad it's good. No, this film is not one of those that's so bad it's good that you can crack open a beer and just like poke fun of it and laugh your ass off and have a good time. I wish it was, but it's not. It just feels like a really low budget after school special that should have never gone to the movie theaters. It's not one of those special films, sorry to say. 2.5 stars. March 2014, I got to say that The Invisible is one of the most absurd and complicated mystery movies I have ever seen, with unnecessary misunderstanding elements throughout the whole movie. The performances of the cast had some extreme intense moments in this movie that some parts seem interesting and engaging. The directing by David S. Goyer was fine. The writers of the screenplay by Mick Davis and Christine Raum made me continuously guessing and wondering what's going to happen next. Wow, this reviewer is saying that it's not really that good, but he's giving it a whole lot of credit it doesn't deserve. No, this director straight up failed in many ways, and whoever wrote the screenplay, they need to go back and get a lot more practice, because if they were trying to do some kind of supernatural teen thriller, they failed on the supernatural, they failed on the thriller, and the teen stuff they got pretty much wrong too, because it's kind of teen and young adult. Like, you've got a mix of teens that are in high school, about to graduate, and older adults that are out of high school, but now they're criminals working out of the seedy side of Seattle or Vancouver, but they're clearly out of high school now. Um, it fails on every level. It's just dumb. Half a star. January 2014, one of the worst movies I have ever seen. Yeah, I can agree with that pretty much. 2 stars. This had such a good premise and a neat little story, but it was directed, acted, and produced in such a bad, bad way. It felt like a kid's film. Yes, it felt like an after school special, but with the PG-13. It was a little too violent. If it had been PG or the violence had been toned down, this would have worked. But there were long stretches of this, like where the car thief, Joel thief, high school girl, she was like running. It spent a lot of time on her running away from the police in various parts. Not exciting, not original, very drawn out, not suspenseful, nothing new, boring. It felt like something you would see in an after school special type movie, but one that was very long and had some intense violence in parts with people beating people with baseball bats and etc. So I don't know why 57% of the audience out of 300,000 people considered this to be okay or better than okay. It's definitely not. This thing is completely ridiculously rotten to its core. It should have 20% on both of those numbers. It really should. And I just can't take talking about this thing anymore. I advise not to watch it. Don't waste your time, not even once, not even if you've got nothing else to do. You've got anything else to do, trust me. And I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.